Hey, so I had a lot of fun over the weekend. I watched a movie called Devil's Advocate. I don't know how many people have actually seen this. It had quite the reputation many a year ago, but this was a movie that is directed by Taylor Hackford. I don't know what else he's done. It's got 3 writers, including Tony Gilroy, who I've certainly heard of before, and it stars Keanu Reeves, Al Pacino, and Charlize Theron, who are all excellent. You know, Keanu Reeves, he's hit and miss. Sometimes he doesn't have that great of a performance. Al Pacino's in some dumb stuff, but he's one of the greats. Charlize Theron, one of the greats again. She's had a couple of not so great movies, but I mean, all 3 of them have high quality pedigree, and they do a very good job in this movie. And there are a couple of things that I want to talk about related to this. Now, generally, I don't just do basic film reviews. That's not what interests me about film. What interests me about film are the things behind it. What are the socio-cultural markers? What are the archetypes? What are the thematics? The things that provide some kind of insight into who we are and what our culture is and what our society is. That's what interests me. So I'm not just jerking around and saying, oh, well, this movie was good or this movie was bad. That's not the point. So for Devil's Advocate, there are a couple of things that I want to talk about. Number one, the movie itself. You definitely know that the only reason they wrote this movie was because of the title. That they just thought, oh, what? It's called Devil's Advocate? But no, dude. What if it was actually the devil? And that was the beginning of the entire movie. You know that's how they got there. And I don't mind it. I understand it's just take something literal in a phrase. It's not the first time that has happened. What does it say on the cover? Evil has its winning ways. Okay, that's stupid. So the general story, if nobody has seen it, and I'm sorry if I spoiled it by saying the first stuff. If you want to go see it, go see it. It's on some thing right now, some streaming service. But Keanu Reeves plays some hotshot lawyer in a smaller town, and he's supposed to be defending this guy who does some very terrible stuff. He handles a lot of PDFs, so he's doing that. So Keanu Reeves has got this dilemma as this attorney in this situation where they go through and they have the testimony of the girl on the stand, and she gives it, and it's tearful, and she's talking about what happened to her. And so Keanu Reeves is like, oh my God, I have to defend this guy, and I don't believe him. I think he totally lied, and he totally did this stuff. And so he goes to the bathroom, and he's like running through it in his brain. What do? I don't know what to do, man. I should have just been a cop surfer. And so he's trying to figure this stuff out. But he comes up with an idea. There's some stuff. Obviously, I don't know how many people who are listening to this are attorneys and know this isn't how the law works when it comes to this. When you go to trial, you've got all this stuff laid out. You know your defense to everything they're going to say. It was on Tubi, that's right. So once you get there, that's not the time that you're figuring all this stuff out and coming up with counter arguments to the strongest part of the prosecutor's case. Anyway. But he goes out there and he says, okay, well, what I'm going to do, and this is unethical, this is horrible, but I'm going to call her integrity into question, and we're going to go, she went to this party, and at this party, apparently she said some stuff about how she wanted to implicate this guy, but she wanted more people to say that he did something so that she would have more support. And she wasn't the only one, and there was a situation where she got reproached for doing poorly on some assignment or some test or something like that. So he uses that to just put enough doubt into this jury that they could say that, okay, based on the thresholds, we can't hold him criminally liable for this situation. He's an evil attorney who gave us enough doubt to undermine this prosecution, and that's that. So it gets wind in this New York firm, finds out how great he did with the case, and apparently he's got a reputation for great voir dire, which is jury selection. And so that being the case, they're going to pay him a whole bunch of money to come out and do voir dire on their case. And he's married to Charlize Theron at this point. She works at like a repossession place or something like that. So anyway, they give him a big check and say, hey, come out to New York, do the voir dire, and we'll see how you do and go from there. And he says, all right, well, let's go. They're just small town. He's got this southern accent. I think he does okay with the accent. Charlize Theron does better, but I think he does okay. I can't remember too many moments where he just breaks through it. Another movie he did an excellent job in, Keanu Reeves, was, what is it called? The Gift with Cate Blanchett. I think she just elevated his abilities tremendously in that. But in this, like I said, I don't remember being noticeable that he goes in and out of this accent. Anyway, they get to New York. And in New York, He does the voir dire, and he outshines this other attorney there. And so they want to offer him some kind of a fast track to partnership or something like that. And so he's got this incredible apartment they're going to give him with this incredible view and this office. And he can go work for that firm now and leave the small town and go to the big city and be a new hotshot attorney who's never lost. By the way, that's one of those ridiculous movie tropes. Like, for a while, I hadn't lost to this one type of case over the course of a long time, and everybody's O goes at some point. It happens. You do so many cases, you file so many motions, eventually you're going to hit a wall at some point. But this guy's the hot shot, so it's a big deal, and he gets to meet Al Pacino, and Al Pacino is the head of this firm, and starts offering him all kinds of extra perks. You know, you have these very attractive females that come around, and all this money, and these special places, and they have these friends, and Charlize Theron is buying all this new stuff for their apartment. It's living the dream as a hotshot attorney in the big city. Then there's this, really wealthy client who is accused of this double homicide of his wife and kid. Or maybe he just I don't know. He murdered somebody. It was either just his wife or his wife and kid. I think it was just his wife. Yeah, because they were talking about the details later. So anyway, he murders his wife, allegedly, and Keanu Reeves is supposed to defend him. And so it's this really, really intense case, and he's going through all the details of it, and he's interviewing people, and he's talking to his secretary, who is his alibi, finds out the secretary was banging him. And so it seems like she's just making it up to protect him, and now he's trying to figure out, okay, back and forth, and what do I do, and do I do this thing that implicates me morally again? And all the while, Charlize Theron is like on the steep descent of her sanity, because she's seeing all these weird things, and these people are acting strange, and she doesn't really have any friends. She doesn't know what to do. She doesn't have him there because he's working 80-hour weeks. And she has all this money, but none of it feels right, and she doesn't know what to do about it. And then she finds out, or she has some kind of a vision or something like that to suggest that she's not able to have children anymore. So this just throws her off the deep end. And then at another point, she has this weird vision of somebody's face turning all weird and evil. And another time, she's telling Keanu Reeves' character, she's saying that, oh, this guy came in and surprise sexed me, and it was for like hours, and I don't know, some part of me wanted him to do it. I think she was talking about Al Pacino doing that. I don't know. He doesn't seem like all that much of a dynamo when it comes to that kind of thing, but who knows? Who knows? And he says, no, he was with me all day. We were in court all day. So it's impossible. He couldn't have done that. So he thinks that she is freaking crazy. And then you've got Diane Lane in this, and you get to see Charlize Theron and this isn't important, but you get to see Diane Lane and Charlize Theron nude. And I'm pretty sure Diane Lane had some kind of work done in that department, because I think they were much more natural historically, but I could be wrong on that. She is gorgeous. She's absolutely gorgeous. Anyway, moving forward, so his wife's going crazy. He's got this another moral dilemma where he's supposed to defend this guy who he thinks did it because the secretary is totally lying about everything. But there's all this money and perks and all this other stuff, and making Al Pacino happy on the other side. And then he's got Diane Lane flirting with him and kissing other girls in front of him, and it's just like, oh my God, what do I do in this situation? And eventually, Charlize Theron, his wife, gets super crazy while his mom is there, and then she self-deletes, and the mom is like, this is totally evil, everything's wrong about this, and you know that. And then he finds out, this one, all of it just goes super, supernatural. He finds out that Al Pacino is actually his father, and that Al Pacino's the devil, and that Diane Lane, who he's been wanting to bang and, seen kissing girls, is actually his sister, and now they want to do this special family-only kind of reproduction so they can bring forth the Antichrist. So yeah, that escalated quickly, and I think he won the case too, and helped the evil guy who murdered his wife. So now we are at the end, and Al Pacino's like, yeah, just bang your sister so we can get this thing going and we can keep the family moving and take all the power and have a whole bunch of money in NYC, and we're going to keep chugging along trying to overturn the status quo, the power status quo when it comes to, eternity and all that. And enticing as Diane Lane is, Keanu Reeves politely declines and self-deletes. And then, in a twist for the ages, he ends up, it just shoots him right back to that bathroom where he was debating on what to do in that first case situation. And it was like he had a vision of everything that would happen thereafter if he did make this decision. And he goes out there and says, I cannot represent this guy, and so I'm going to withdraw myself as an attorney. Now, you actually have to motion to be able to withdraw as an attorney, and there's a whole bunch of consideration of prejudice that might happen if you do withdraw. If you have reason to believe that your client is going to lie, you have good enough reason to believe that your client is going to go on stand and lie, then you can refuse to question the client, but still be their attorney. But you have to actually motion and it be granted to be able to get out of a case when you're an attorney. You can't just walk off and just be done. But anyway, so he says, no, I'm not going to represent this guy. He's horrible. And then he walks out with Charlize Theron and everything's fine. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to be this hotshot attorney in this situation anymore. But I kept my integrity and I'm not going to meet the devil and all that stuff. But that still does beg the question if his real father actually was the devil, Al Pacino, and he has an evil sister and they're trying to usher in the apocalypse and the Antichrist. Because if that's still, like, that's something he's still going to have to deal with emotionally and actually. He's still going to have to deal with that, even if he decides to have a little bit more moral character in that situation. Anyway, yeah, so the things that I wanted to talk about, like I said, were just the naming. The naming's funny to me, that they went from the name and definitely built the entire movie based on the name. But second, women's intuition. This is something else that I want to talk about. Is that, so one of the things that we do know that is different between men and women is women are much, much more intuitive. They have to be much more in tune with human emotions just in general, not just for purposes of, rearing children, which is something biologically that they're much better at, but also in being able to pick out threats when it comes to other people, especially men. So one of the things that you see repeatedly, and this is something that you'll see in 90s movies in general, that was a very common trope because it was something that made a whole lot of sense, that was very accurate, was that women would intuitively understand people who are a threat. They'd try to warn their husband, and their husband would, eschew it because it doesn't have any kind of a brutish logic to it. There's no one-to-one obvious synchronicity between the things that she's saying. So therefore, he's just not going to take it. And then something bad would happen as a result. But in this movie in particular, that's something that Charlize Theron and his mom are constantly bringing up, the fact that something is just wrong about this whole situation. Now, he's got it just down in his head. He's like, no, I'm an excellent attorney, and I want all this money, and I can just dominate in the courtroom, and we'll be very well off, and we're not going to go back to Tennessee or wherever I'm from. Because I've got it down, I know these people, I know how to handle it. But the women are saying that, okay, yeah, we get all that, but you know what? It's like, I've met these people. I know that something feels off about the way this whole thing is going. And we, the two closest women in your life right now, are telling you that you ought not pursue this thing anymore. She's saying, and she's representing it as, Charlize Theron's character is representing it as, I feel alone here. I don't feel connected to anybody. I don't feel connected to the place. I feel like we need to go back home and have a real life and forget all of this stuff. And the mother has a more direct reason because she knows, she meets Al Pacino and is like, oh yeah, you're the guy. You're the guy that I slept with, like 30 years ago or whatever, and had a baby with. And so this is really awkward. And you haven't paid any child support, but this is not something that I think we should be running into right now. So hers is a little more direct and less intuitive, but she still is saying, even when they were back at home, she was saying that, she has religious rationales for it. She rationalizes based on religious precepts, but she's saying that, it's much more important for you to take care of your family, to be close to family, and stop caring about money and caring about going and doing those things. So it is a really interesting phenomenon. And you look at it nowadays and you see that historically in movies and in other media, you would see that women's intuition, especially in like horror movies, like The Gift, that's another one. But you'd see women's intuition about people and how effective it was. And then nowadays, I would venture to say that it's much less likely for it to come up stereotypically for women to demonstrate their aptitude intuitively. It would be more a masculinized version of well, I figured this thing out and therefore I'm suspicious of this person, or I figured that thing out and therefore I'm going to follow it up and go after this person in this way. So I just wonder what that means in grander, more historical terms, because that's something that we are especially divorced from, especially in Disney movies, is we are divorcing ourselves from what the psychological meaning of these stories is. Walt Disney and the original Disney movies that came out, they had very deep psychological wisdom embedded into the stories because they were based on, stories that had those things built in. So things like Pinocchio and Snow White and Cinderella, they had these archetypes that were the governing ideas that are very deeply connected to the way that we think and our biological inclinations and these truths that are very difficult to articulate, but you have a connection to them when you see them on screen. But today, we have this really denuded, masculinized, brutish way of looking at these stories, and that's why you get these Disney things where they are so out of ideas, the only thing they can think to do is insert a different gender or insert a different skin color and just say, oh, well, that's good enough, right? And then they take out all of the things in all these stories like even Mulan, which isn't even all that deep, but still has more psychological presence than the remake. But they'll retell these stories and strip out everything that they don't understand, that has all the connection to those deep wisdom traditions that are more complex than the very surface level, brutish kinds of stories that we get. So anyway, I just thought that was fun. It's a fun movie. It really is. And I really don't think that it's something that could be made today because it's kind of all over the place and has a lot of abuse imagery. And even though it's telling a story going the other direction, trying to say this is the wrong thing to be doing, it's something that would be just beat on for having the content that it has. Now, it's not brilliant or anything like that. That's not why I wanted to talk about it. There are a lot of really goofy things about it, but it was a lot of fun, and I just wanted to discuss those things a little bit. So anyway, anybody who watched this, I appreciate it, or listened to this, I appreciate it, and I'll see you on the next one. All right, bye.